Hi everybody, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a portrait in the style of Kehinde Wiley in Photopea. So we're going to break down this project in three main parts. We're going to create a repeating pattern background, we're going to filter a figure, and then we're going to also add additional patterns in the foreground so that it looks like the figure is nested in between two layers. Now for this particular project, I suggest an image size of 100 dpi, a height of 1200, and a width of 1000 pixels. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, for this assignment you'll need two different images. You'll need a photograph to work with, and you will also need a pattern that can be repeated in the background. Now you can either create one yourself using the shapes tools or drawings, but I chose to use a stencil of a damask pattern. Alright, so let's get started on the background first. So once you have the shape that you want to create your pattern out of, we need to first remove all of the background. So I'm actually going to paint my background a color so that I can see if I've correctly deleted all my white areas. If you imported your image and you see this little box in the lower right hand side, that just means you need to rasterize this layer. So we're going to right click, rasterize, and then we can treat it like a piece of paper and cut areas away. Now, for an image like this, which is mostly black and white, we're going to see if we can remove this using our channels. So go over here to channels on the right hand side. All the way at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little square made out of dashed lines. Go ahead and click on that. Okay, and then we're going to press delete. Let's go back to our layers. Just click back on layers over here. And we need to undo our selection, so we're going to press Command D or Control D. So that looks pretty good. Then we're going to take this image and we're going to repeat it in the background. So at this point, if you would like your shape to have an outline or to have several colors, this is a good time to do that. I think I would like to add a stroke around it. So I'm going to click on my layer. I'm going to go down to EFF for effects. Click on stroke. All right. Now it defaults to the color red. This looks good to me. And then I'm actually going to turn off this red background. It's a bit distracting. Then if you don't want it to be a solid black like mine is, we can always go back down to EFF. Go to color overlay and choose a different color that you think works. Then we're going to select our move tool. We're going to make sure transform controls is on. We're going to hold down shift as we click and drag to make sure we maintain the proper aspect ratio. Perfect. Then we're going to go to filter, other, repeat. And this is what is going to create our pattern effect. Okay, so our background pattern is complete. So I'm actually going to turn it off for right now. Just unclick the eyeball, and I'm going to work on adjusting the photograph. All right, so your photograph really should reach the entire dimensions of the canvas. So we're going to click and drag as we're holding shift. So for a figure like this, where we have a mostly solid background, we're going to try to delete that background using our quick selection tool. So it is hidden behind the magic wand. So just go to magic wand, do a long press, click on quick selection, Click on that background once. Unfortunately, it selected too much. It actually selected the figure. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to click on minus. So we're going to try to remove parts of that selection. And I'm going to click on my face. Let's press delete. Oh, okay, so your image might need to be rasterized, so right click, rasterize, and then we can delete. Great. I'm going to now try to select this window, but I'm going to deselect my selection as it is right now so the computer doesn't get confused. So I'm going to press Command D or Control D. So if the background is not deleting very easily, we can always switch our tools over to the Lasso Tools. So you can either use the Polygon Lasso tool or just the regular Lasso tool. I'm going to try to freehand it using the Lasso tool. Okay. And this one allows you basically to freehand the areas that you want to cut out. We now need to adjust the image a bit to resemble an oil painting. First thing I'm going to do is adjust my color a bit. I do want to have some more saturated color, so I'm going to click on Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. And I'm going to increase the saturation a bit. Be careful with the saturation, you don't want to go too far, things will get disastrous. So just punch up the color a little bit. You could also try to correct the color a bit if perhaps your skin tone's a bit too green or perhaps too purple depending on your lighting, but this looks good to me. We're going to try to fix some of our imperfections on our face. Now, oil paintings tend to have a real slick, smooth surface, so we're going to try to replicate that. Now, if you have some minor blemishes or freckles that you don't want in your final design, you can always click on this spot healing brush tool, which looks like a band-aid. You can just paint over small areas, and they should correct themselves. Now, you don't want to go too overboard with this, right? Because it's very easy to take it too far. In order to give it an oil paint effect, there is actually an oil paint filter in Photopea. I'm personally not a fan of it. I think it creates too much texture, and you'll see what I mean. So if we go up here to filter, if we go to stylize and we click on oil paint, you'll see it creates this brush stroke effect on the face that I personally am not a fan of. You can play around with it, see what works best in your design. I personally think it works best in landscapes. Instead, what we're going to do is a different filter. So I'm going to zoom in a bit so you can see what we're talking about. So we're going to go to Filter, Stylize, Diffuse, and we have 4 options here. We're going to click on Anisotropic, and that very gently smooths out your features and also creates a brush-like effect. We're going to say OK. We are going to turn on our background layer and just make sure your figure is above it. So it looks something like this. Okay, so for stage 3, we are going to take some of our patterns from the background and lay them on top of the figure so that the figure is nested in between. So we're going to take our original pattern layer, we're going to right-click it, and we're going to rasterize the layer style. And once that is done, we're going to duplicate our pattern layer. Right-click, duplicate. And we're going to place one of those layers above your portrait so that we have pattern, portrait, pattern. The top pattern layer, we're going to place a raster mask on top of. So make sure that layer is selected. and go to the bottom of your screen and select the white rectangle with the black dot. That should create a raster mask on top of this layer. Now, raster masks allow you to hide areas without destroying them. We're going to grab a paintbrush and we're going to select black. And I'm going to start painting with my brush in the areas that I want to hide that top layer. You will notice over here in the raster mask, there is a black area where I was hiding part of the pattern. If I wanted to undo that, I would reverse my colors and go to white and bring them back. So now that you have removed part of the top layer, we are ready to decide on our final background color. Okay, so at this point, I think we are done. You have your background pattern layer, your filtered portrait, and some more pattern in the foreground. Okay, I hope you guys found this helpful.